Hey guys, so a year ago I completed my Kylo Ren costume and wanted to share with you what it takes to put together a cosplay like this. This was actually my first cosplay ever, and starting this I had essentially zero sewing experience. So, as involved as an outfit as Kylo Ren's is, it can still be doable for a beginner if you have enough inspiration and can set your mind to it. The intention of this video is to be a general overview of what goes into the Kylo Ren costume. There's a lot of pieces to my costume and even more to the movie set accurate one. So I want to cover what pieces I included, what elements I omitted, and why. I'd love to cover some of the individual pieces in much greater detail, but that'll require their own separate videos. So if you guys are at all interested in that, let me know in the comments below. Since my wife and I are both photographers, my overall goal with this project was to have the final result look as screen accurate as possible in photos, but not necessarily have to be movie set accurate in design. This may sound contradictory at first, but you'll see what I mean in a minute. The Last Jedi was not out yet when I started this project, so my costume is based off of what you see in The Force Awakens. Besides, I actually like his costume more from The Force Awakens anyways, so that worked out. Kylo Ren's outfit is very layered and has a lot of individual garments to it. So, as with any big project, let's break it down into smaller pieces. If you do your research, you'll find that the movie set accurate costume has the helmet, hood, scarf and cape, gorget, surcoat or overcoat, fur midcoat, pleated tunic, pleated sleeves, gloves, pants, belt, and boots. In addition to all this, you'll want a balaclava so that your neck and chin don't peek through the gaps. So here's where I took a couple of my own liberties. There's a few of those layers that you honestly never see in The Force Awakens. Namely, the fur midcoat and pleated tunic. The fur midcoat is worn right underneath the surcoat, and it just never shows up. Like, anywhere. Literally the Avanos page doesn't even show it. But if you watch Adam Savage putting on the Avanos costume, you'll see the fur coat there. So, because you never see it, I just omitted this layer completely. When I made this costume, I thought I might make this layer in the future to do more snow photo shoots, but as it turns out, this dang costume is warm enough without needing it. I did wear black ski pants and snow boots for this photo shoot though. As for the pleated tunic, I skipped the pleats to save time, effort, fabric, and money. In my opinion, you really don't see this layer enough in the movie to justify spending that much effort on it. Besides, I personally am always going to be wearing the full costume. Depending on your project, you might be able to justify omitting this layer completely. I decided to keep it just sans pleats to add a little bit of bulk, and also so that I'd have another layer underneath that might come out in some of the more dynamic poses. As for the rest, there were some pieces I bought outright, some I altered or repurposed, and several I created from scratch. Starting with the purchased pieces, the helmet I went with was the Black Series helmet. It's honestly just the best bang for your buck, even though it comes in at a solid $170 to $200. Anything cheaper just looks, well, bad. Your next and really only step up from the Black Series helmet is the $700 Avanos helmet at over triple the price. Ouch. The gloves were also a piece I purchased, and they're a total steal. You can find them on Amazon for literally $25. And they look just as good as the Avanos gloves. Alternatively, if you have some black leather gloves or some work gloves lying around, those might work too. For the pants, I got some black skinny jeans because Kylo Ren is a punk bitch who weighs 30 pounds soaking wet underneath that black dress. For the shoes, I used a pair of black work boots I already owned, which have turned out great. Like the gloves, you can find some pretty darn accurate boots on Amazon for anywhere between $70 and $200. But, like so many other layers, you really don't see Kylo's boots all that often, and going with the boots I already had saved me some money on an already very expensive costume. So, the only piece I had altered from something else for the costume was the tunic layer. Everything else was either bought or made from scratch. And remember, to be movie accurate, this would actually be completely pleated from top to bottom. For this layer, I actually used the black pencil dress I found at a thrift store that maybe fit me a little too well. Anyways, I seam ripped the sleeves off and seam ripped up the sides, front, and back to create these 4 panels. I got lucky with this find because the dress already had seams exactly where I needed them to make the panels. If not for the seams, I still could have just cut it and hemmed the edges, but this was just convenient. Now for the fun part, all the pieces I made from scratch. To make the pleated sleeves, I designed my own sleeve pattern, sewed a crap ton of 1.5" strips onto it, sewed them into the sleeve pattern, closed the sleeve, and sewed it onto a black shirt after seam ripping the existing sleeves off. This ended up coming out a lot heavier and thicker than I thought. Also, if you're not putting a zipper in the cuffs, I'd highly recommend making sure that the fabric you use for this has at least some stretch to it. It's really inconvenient to get the gloves on without having a zipper in the cuffs, but I guess not as inconvenient as sewing zippers into a pleated sleeve. I just make sure to put on the gloves first, or just deal with it. The inner rage it evokes really helps me connect to the dark side. For the sleeve fabric, I used the So Classics Hop Sack linen fabric from Joann's, and I really like the texture of it. The sleeves are honestly one of my favorite parts of the costume. For Kylo's BDSM choker collar, gorget, I followed Adam Savage's video on how to make that. Even though his video isn't explicitly a tutorial, it's not too difficult to follow along and make your own pattern for it. I used Velcro to secure it in the back, since I thought that would be easier than doing a zipper. The surcoat or overcoat is obviously the biggest and most involved piece of the Kylo Ren costume. Overall, I'm quite happy with how it came out, especially for being a beginner at sewing. I believe the biggest thing that sells the look is not cheaping out on the fabric. If you can save up for a more screen-accurate textured woven fabric, you won't be disappointed. I used the Yaya Han basket weave fabric and bought it on sale from Joann's for a massive coupon clipping discount. The fabric you use for these outermost pieces will easily be the single most expensive component of your outfit. Not only is this fabric $30 a yard at full price, but you need a lot of it. This same fabric gets used for the hood and cape pieces as well, and the cape alone can be 2.5 to 3 solid yards depending on how tall you are. So, by pouncing on it all at once when there's a good coupon, I was able to get it for a huge percentage off. I followed the McCall's pattern for this garment with a couple liberties here or there. I should note that I did not follow any of the other included patterns in this pack for any of the other garments. Taking Dawn Bright's advice, I only have a little zipper at the top to be able to get it on and off, which I can almost do without any help. Getting it off is the toughest part. Even though you don't see it, the pattern calls for a backing or lining on the inside. Essentially, it's sewn like a blanket with the right sides together, then flipped inside out. I decided to include this lining because it added a little bit more weight and bulk and made it altogether a little bit more sturdy. As beautiful as the outer fabric is, it's pretty delicate, just like Kylo's feelings. So this at least helps protect the inside from rubbing and chafing against the other garments. As I noted before, the hood and cape are made out of the same fabric. They're actually two separate pieces, just safety pinned together. Figuring out how to get the cape to sit somewhat similarly to the movie or action figures was a total bitch. Lots of trial and error, but totally worth it in the end. So far, the only accurate tutorial I could find for layering the cape is Dawn Bright's, but it still leaves a lot for you to figure out on your own. So, I know I'm kinda skimming over this, but as I mentioned earlier, I'd like to do more detailed videos explaining each piece in greater depth. And last but not least, the final piece that brings it all together is the belt. I used a stretchy black faux leather for the body and trim of it. It didn't need to be stretchy, it just happened to be in the fabric that I found. And because I was a total noob at sewing and didn't know what interfacing was and how many different kinds there were, the interfacing I ended up with was just super floppy. I would really like to redo this belt with a more rigid interfacing. But as a plus, it rolls up nicely for storage. Theoretically, the worst thing that could happen is that the belt bends or creases in a more bent over pose. But so far in all of our photo shoots, this hasn't been a problem yet, and we've done some pretty intense poses. I bought a 3D printed belt buckle off of Etsy and glued it straight to the faux leather. These buckles are totally screen accurate and way better than anything I could ever make on my own. And they're reasonably priced too. Just make sure it's the right size for you. The belt just fastens with Velcro, which was the simplest way to secure it. I haven't had any issues with it coming undone or doing anything weird. The Velcro I bought ended up being extremely strong. In fact, if it was any stronger, I'd actually be concerned it might stretch or damage the belt when trying to rip it off. So that's pretty much it for recreating Kylo Ren's costume. While this was a really daunting project to take on, seeing it all come together in the end was absolutely worth it. So if you're a beginner who's hesitant on starting on their first project, I hope you found some reassurance or some inspiration from this. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this video or found it helpful, and until next time, thanks for watching.